Hello everybody and welcome back to Writing the Rapids, the show where I, Joe Bielecki, talk to writers about writing. Very often those writers have been recommended to me by writers who have previously been on the show. In the case of this month's guest, Christopher Norris, he was recommended to me by John Treffry. Christopher Norris is the author of The Holy Day and Hunchback 88 and makes art under the name Stake Mountain. He lives in Brooklyn, New York. Before we get into my conversation with Christopher, I'll remind you that for just $2 a month, you can head over to patreon.com/noisemakerjoe and get these episodes a little bit earlier than everybody else. If you can't do the money thing, no worries. Go ahead and tell 2 friends about the show who don't already know about it. Or, I don't know, haven't listened in a while, that sort of thing. You can also post about it, blog about it, share it in your newsletter, like, comment, subscribe, all those things. Leave a steak emoji in the comments, and that'll do just fine. Now, without further ado, let's get into my conversation with Christopher. All right, let's start with Hunchback 88. Okay. Because it came out before The Holy Day, right?
Yes, it did. It's come out in 2 iterations. It originally came out in 2018 by a Canadian press called Permanent Sleep Press. Is run by a guy named Matt Finner out of Toronto, who had put out a couple of poetry books and a couple of books. One by my friend Chris Callahan, who was in a hardcore band called Hearst, and he reached out and asked if I had a book, and it was funny because I did. And then when that went out of print, when he kind of winding that down, that's when John Treffry came through with Inside the Castle, because he was a very early enthusiast of it, and he asked if we could do a whatever the fuck his thing is called, with the Crypt edition. So I expanded it from there. I had added some friends, artists and stuff like that, kind of put some more images in there. I got Tony Stella, who's a German painter who does a lot of movie posters and stuff, to do the cover as a bro favor, and then had a couple people write some short stories for the end that have nothing to do with the book, but something to do with the book. Chris Zeischig, Thomas More, Maggie Siebert, and John, who had written a review.
Yeah.
So that's all in there. And that was like sometime, I don't know, man. I don't remember when that came out. After the pandemic had started, anyways. 2021 or
yeah,
I don't know, something like that. I mean, definitely before The Holy Day, which is 2 years old at this point.
Okay.
So yes, I don't remember when this came out, but it's in the past, let's say 6 years somewhere. Yeah. So that's that. I don't remember, but
it's funny. I'm flipping through it because both Hunchback and The Holy Day have the copyright information kind of in the middle of the text block.
Yeah.
I'm like, where is it? I should have marked it. I can't find it. Of course.
I don't even know. Anyways, whatever. It's out there, and it's occasionally available. You know what? I don't know if we even did that for Hunchback 88. That's such a not John style thing to put in a book, where it seems like an affront to his whole mission,
Sure. Yeah. It's like I found it. It's kind of like here-ish. It's like it's just before the essays and stories and additional images and
October 2021. Got it.
Yep.
There we go.
And then 2018 Permanent Sleep Press.
Permanent Sleep. Wow. Okay. There we go. God, I don't even remember doing this.
That's
which
awesome.
Is, I think, the case of a lot of people. You know what I mean? You just keep on swimming and you forget, unless you've got a memory like a bear trap, which I do not have. So, at least for stuff like that, I'm like, yeah. Anyways, so yeah, October 21, which was cool, and John's whole bit is rad, and I was very attracted to that. His whole thing, books is war, basically. let's just call it that. I'm sure he would appreciate that. And I really, yeah, it was a cool experience, and kind of being part of that crew of people that like I goof on it sometimes, and it's like how do I describe John's whole thing? I'm like, it's like a microwave manual with like necrophilia in it. That's the kind of books he puts out. You know what I mean? It's like these just willfully just fucking defiant texts, that I appreciate somebody out there in John's position to just be stumping for the difficult, for the non-narrative, for the atmospheric, for the, sometimes barely words, and I really love that about his whole scene and his whole world, and what he's influenced, and really like him, like Philip Best, just these characters who've come along in the past like 10 years, who kind of magnified this. You want to call it aggressive because it's aggressively different than a normal writing, but they're not necessarily aggressive texts. That being said, and to use the T word, it's, there's a lot of transgressive stuff in at least 80% of that whole writing section. Everybody loves Peter Sotos or Cooper, or, people who I don't particularly love, but I understand their worth, That's not true. I do like Peter Sotos, but it's very limited in my attention span for how he writes. But, but I mean, he's, without him, we wouldn't have a lot of this stuff, so, or people wouldn't have a way to understand that they could write like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so anyways, so I'm tangenting already, but yeah, so that was the deal with that. And I haven't picked it up in years. But it gets asked about a lot, actually, especially when it goes out of print, which John, it does kind of often with John, because his stuff is all print on demand, or he does them in groups like that. I mean, he'll order 40 and send it to Asterism or Heap or himself or whatever. And so, and it's come out a lot recently, like, because it's been unavailable at Asterism for a month or two. Yeah, it seems to be still have a very interesting life of its own for people discovering it or hearing about it, whether it be a fucking Reddit chain of quote unquote fucked up novels or whatever, you know what I mean, or a TikTok of horror novels you should read. I've seen that come up where I'm like, really? All right, sure. But yeah, so there's that. Hunchback 88.
Yeah. That's interesting to me that it kind of comes up like that. I remember, I think the first time I heard it was, I was on a call. It might even have been like on the air. I was talking to John and Mike Correo and Mike Klein for like a roundtable episode years ago. And it must have been in 2020, either within the text of the episode or after, while we were just hanging out. He mentioned that he was going to be republishing Hunchback. And I think Correo was like, oh, I love that book. And, that's interesting to me. I definitely 6 years ago felt like I was incredibly out of the loop. And now I'm in a loop, right? I think my issue, if I have one, is that I'm like, I feel like I'm in a loop, and so I'm not looking to expand it as much as I was 6 years ago when I was just like starting to get into this. I'm like, we got Amphetamine Sulfate and Inside the Castle and Rose Books and 1111 and a couple others, Apocalypse Party, and like that's great. And then like I'll learn about others when I have poets on, because there's a million poetry presses that I'm not aware of and stuff.
That's definitely a world unto itself, for sure.
Yeah. It is fascinating to see where the silos are too, as a person whose I don't know, scope is broader than some, but not as broad as everybody within each silo, right? within like the people who only read Hunchbacks type novels, I'm sure there's a dozen presses where people are like, how are you not reading this? Shane Jesse Christmas was just on. I was just talking to him, and he's like, well, of course you know this press and this press. And I was like, nope, sorry. No. I'm going to write them down.
I don't, homeboy. I don't. God, what's his book that John put out? Belfie Hell? Is that him?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, yes.
I think
yes,
that was
I did
2018, 2019, I think.
Yeah, that's what I'm remembering. Yeah.
But yeah. And of course, I've said this before too, that like half of my reading is stuff for this show, and then the other half is a mix of fantasy novels as palate cleanser, and then like books people have brought up on the show. Sure. Where it's like, oh yeah, you
never know,
because people are like, oh yeah, Elaine Grillette or a million other French names, Hollebeck, and it's like, okay, yep, I guess I gotta write that down and read that.
Sure. The next Duras or Robbe-Grillet, right, or fucking whatever, Claude Simon, anything. I mean, the new novel, and at least this scene of people, the amphetamine sulfates and the apocalypse parties and the fucking 11/11s, everybody. I mean, the new novel people, the French new novel, I think that is probably everybody's North Star on some level, whether it be the dryness of Duras or the complication of Robbe-Grillet, especially for me, both of them. But I mean, and I don't mean this in a flippant or a performative way. It's I don't really read that much. You know what I mean? I just don't have the time for it, and I have other interests that take up time, like movies, or having two jobs. So it's like when it's time to wind down, it's either I'm mostly reading something a friend wrote, because I do believe in making the space there. You know what I mean? Ultimately, so yeah, I don't get a chance to do it as much, and if I do, my eyes are usually shot. If it's time, like I'm like, maybe I'll read something, I'll be like, yeah, but I looked at a screen for 14 hours today, and and I was going to try to watch a movie, but that's going to fry my brain too. And so it's like, but reading words might just put me out, like at this level, you know what I mean? So I don't get to read as much as I'd like to. Zyshig always like laughs and thinks I'm lying when I tell him that, and I've told him that on his podcast as well. But it's just that I wish, but I have other interests. You know what I mean? I have other ways to spend time that are maybe even less taxing on my brain in general, which is basically watching movies, because you can just not pay attention, You can
just let it happen to you. Yeah, You
just let it happen, It's ambient watching,
Sometimes you get into bed at midnight after a long day of working, and picking up some bataille is just gonna just take you right out.
Exactly. But then like the flip is like I'm not really like read a fucking Robert Ludlum novel either. So but like maybe some like Tinker Tailor or Soldier Spy shit maybe, but like in general, no, I don't get to do it as much as I'd like to, if at all, unless again, if it's a bro of some sort, I'm like, oh, I just like I'd listen to a band's terrible record, I will read your hopefully not terrible novel, or watch your hopefully not terrible short film or feature film, so all depending. But yeah, I wish. Fantasy novels though, huh? Like what kind of stuff?
So I recently read the initial Dragonlance books.
Okay, yeah.
And I grew up. Yeah. I grew up. My dad read David Eddings books and Terry Brooks books to us as bedtime stories, and then I graduated into like R.A. Salvatore stuff. So like my fantasy novels are largely like branded Dungeons and Dragons type stuff.
Sure.
And like,
I mean, is there any other kind when you're talking about fantasy?
I mean, that's true. And
or that have a sustainability that you would make the effort. Whether it's it's something like any of those or you know, Game of Thrones kind of thing. And it's like I feel like those things do make a giant dent when they're great, you know. And there are obviously obscure things inside of that. You know, you get some nerd with a pentagram on their wall or whatever, and you know, black lipstick and everything else, and they're like, but have you ever heard of this one? You know what I mean? And you're like, maybe, you know. But like, that's cool though, you know. That's a good palate cleanser. Actually, I
largely read them because they're easy, you know. As you know, I read a couple of your books and like, yeah, dog, I need to read a graphic novel, or I need to
bro, give me some pictures with words, bro. No, I understand.
Or I need a guy with a sword going to kill a thing, like, and I, you know, I like that I can enjoy all of that because, yeah, like, people who have a narrower scope of the things that they enjoy, I find burn out, and then they feel lost.
Yes, of course.
And
or they're just not willing to admit that they like things that are out of the edge. You know, if we're just specifically speaking to the world that clearly I'm a part of, you know what I mean? It's like there are people inside of that. It's like who don't, you know, it's like when a metalhead won't tell you that he secretly likes Taylor Dane. You know what I mean? Like, so like, you know, he's just like, but bro, the song's good, man. You know, what do you mean you don't like fucking Black Box? Like, you know. So
that was a whole bit in that Green Room movie. That was like the whole running thing.
Don't even get me fucking started on that thing. There's just no fucking way. As a person who's been on tour, I don't do this in movies. I don't bullet count. I don't talk about logic. I don't talk about plot holes because it's useless, because life has fucking plot holes. It doesn't matter. But I can tell you as a touring musician who definitely would at any fucking moment drop of a hat, hit a fucking skinhead in the head with a fucking bat. You know, there's just no fucking way that there's no amount of money you need for gas money to get your ass to that club. That being said, once they get there, it is a great, you know, one location fucking, you know, chamber thriller that's fucking scary, you know. But I just like getting in there, like for everyone else in the world who's watching it, they're like, oh my God, it's fucked up. And yeah, punks will probably fuck around with skinheads, but like, I just know they would never end up there, and they sure as fuck wouldn't be singing fucking a Dead Kennedys fucking song to a group of boneheads. No. I know that for fucking sure. But
only have a couple bottles thrown at them while they're playing it.
Yeah, like, dude, those guys would be, well, they would be dead.
Yeah,
but not in a room. You know what I mean? Not hiding in a room. They'd get dragged off the stage and beat fucking senseless.
Yeah,
you know. So, like, skinheads don't play. You know?
Yeah, like that's their whole thing. Yeah,
they're fucking morons, but they one of their greatest assets is their immediacy in reacting.
Yeah,
when they're being told to fuck off.
Yeah,
you know. So,
but yeah, I'll agree with you on that point. Sure. In the past couple months, I've started going to local hardcore shows.
Oh yeah,
and like, you know, it's like wild that the promoter will get up and he'll be like, we got some great bands, everyone respect the space, we need to start having public executions for ICE agents yesterday. Like, holy fuck, dude. Like, from the people I have engaged with at those shows, I also believe like you would never convince those guys to go out into the sticks to play a show for those guys.
No matter how much, no matter how desperate, how destitute you are, how ripped off you got at a place that only gave you $10 and a fucking Taco Bell gift card. There's just no way if somebody was like, hey, I know this skinhead bar that will pay you a lot of money to come play your terrible punk music.
Yeah. No.
And Patrick Stewart runs the fucking skinhead group. Why don't you guys go?
Yeah.
No, it's just anyways, but that being said, we're talking about scope and interest, and some of these like hardcore kind of guys, not hardcore the bands, but like hardcore psychopaths who like, you know, transgressive garbage and, you know, are excited about 40 fucking pages of a corpse rotting or whatever. Well, you know, they will burn out because one, in that scene, and this is like any scene, so it's not disparaging, it's just that this scene is small, the quality of this scene sometimes isn't there, particularly in the writing,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And this is kind of sometimes a problem I find. It's a problem I found as a punk and hardcore
Mm-hmm.
person, a metal person, anything. It's just that like that, you know, especially in punk and hardcore, you get the sense that like because it can show you it shows you how easy it is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the great amazing revelations as a child, as a
Yeah.
kid, when you hear punk music and then you're like, you know, when we were going to death metal shows and then a small grindcore band played in a record store,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when I saw that I was like, wait, what? You know what I mean? It really did blow my mind. And so it was like, oh, anything's possible. But the, you know, I'm not saying that any of my peers or people in the scene are lazy writers, but there is a sense that like, because you could kind of just do whatever the fuck you want,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's sometimes just like a sometimes not necessarily a there's no quality control,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and some of this scene, you know. And so you know, if you're dedicated to this kind of writing, like your pool is fucking small and it's not often super great,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so yeah, I could see how people would get burned out and just like, just bro, just admit it. Watch a Nora Ephron movie, or I don't know, fucking, you know, be excited about anything else, because you have to be, because you do need a palate cleanser, like you said.
Yeah.
You know, if you're in the fucking toilet, dude, you might drown, you know, like, so, you know, you get a breath of fresh air occasionally. It's all right. You're still hard.
Mm-hmm.
You're still a sicko, you know,
Oh, yeah.
like, you know, so it's very important, you know. I mean, I think that in culture in general, I feel like, you know, it because of the internet, because of how you know, I don't know what age you are, but like growing up with the expansion of the internet, and even growing up as a child of the 80s, like you did get so much crossover that wasn't available in the 60s, you know, probably the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Even just things down to like Anthrax and Public Enemy doing a song together, you know, like that was a big thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like, and you just kind of, or you were just a kid who sat in front of fucking MTV and saw every single video. And so you were just like, yeah, I do think that Headbangers Ball was awesome, but I also watch MTV Raps, and secretly I think this Paula Abdul song is awesome, you know. So it's like, it's in culture, I think that there is an idea that everybody kind of likes a little bit of anything, but some people get too scared to admit, you know, if they're wearing all black and you know, whatever, and they're scared to admit that they like something dumb.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but like, newsflash, they kind of already like something dumb, but like, it's, you know, it's comfort for people, and I understand that. Anyways,
Yeah.
tangent.
Yeah. I like, I've softened so much on various hardcore things that as a teen I was super opposed to. So I'm 33 now. When I was 16, 17, 18, I was in a metalcore band. So this would have been like 2010, like prime time. And I thought the windmill arms was the dumbest thing. I thought the doing squats during the breakdowns was the dumbest thing. God, it's no wonder I got kicked out after a couple of years. Like my screams weren't great at the time either, but like, and I didn't want to clean sing. Like, metalcore was not the genre I should have been playing music in, but
Sure.
it was the band at the high school, and they asked me to be in it, so I said yes.
Which is what happens. You know what I mean? You know, it could have ended up being Slipknot. You never know.
It
you know
could have been great.
So like, yeah, you know.
And you know, going back to shows now, and seeing kids who are the age I was then. And I went to a show this past Thursday where like this same group of friends who I had seen at like every show I've been to were the opening band. I had no idea that they were a band. I was like, oh my God, these guys have been going to every show like in town, and they're also in a band. Like, that's like, we never did that. We never did that. The only shows we ever went to were the shows we played.
Well,
and like, and it kind of seemed like maybe that was the case too, because like the guys who were in band A when we were playing with band B were not there, and vice versa. Um, and the scene feels so much better now than it did then. And the music's way better. The music's way better.
I believe you. You know, I think that there's a ceiling on that music, so it's very hard for me to. I feel like punk, hardcore, metal. Like I would rather die than listen to a punk or hardcore record these days. But I do keep up on death metal records because that was my first this is my thing as a kid.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And then kind of backed into punk and hardcore and ended up obviously in hardcore bands. But like my thing, as a kid, I felt very much in tune with me as a 13-year-old when I moved to Tampa, Florida, and the death metal boom was happening. It was just a great coincidence, that like that you could just go to the metal record store and the Morbid Angel guys would be there hanging out. And it's just like this thing where it's like, this is my thing,
Yeah.
So I keep up on that stuff because it did have a great effect on me, and I still am interested enough. It's very fucking hands off. And I still know a lot of death metal guys, so I'll just I'll be like, who are you touring with? Oh, what's this band sound like? Oh, this band's fucking crazy. But then I might listen to it once or twice and be like, cool. Right. Anyways, so what's the sound of not playing any music sound like? Because that's what I'd rather hear. But like, yeah, no, I haven't been to a show or anything in a really long time. But it's interesting you're saying that you softened on kind of details about hardcore. It's, as a kid when I was in hardcore bands, we were in the kind of hardcore bands that wasn't Earth Crisis or Marauder or Hatebreed. It was grindy kind of screamo before screamo was considered something that like was a Warped Tour thing. It was definitely more influenced by Napalm Death than it was fucking anything that Ian MacKaye did after fucking Minor Threat. But like but it's funny now. It's like and I've talked about this recently. It's like now, as a kid, we would always shun shit like Earth Crisis or Marauder or fucking whatever, Madball. But now when I hear that shit, I'm like, damn, this stuff's fucking awesome, dude. I don't know what we were thinking as kids, except that we were at odds with that stuff because we were a generation after being tough, and we were all 90 pounds fucking soaking wet in fucking thrift store clothes in Florida. You know what I mean? We were a bunch of little fucking wimps, so being in a fucking basketball jersey, fucking windmilling and fucking doing any of that shit just seemed so it seemed moronic. You know what I mean? And in a way that like we thought we were better than, truly, and whether it be dealing with FSU guys in Boston or any beatdown crew in any city, like we would always talk shit and make fun of that stuff. Now I hear all that stuff, and I'd rather hear that than most of the stuff that I liked when I was a kid. Like I would instantly listen to Marauder's Master Killer than fucking anything Antioch Arrow did. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, that's interesting. I especially you coming around to it again and kind of going out to shows again and feeling less, judgmental.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's it.
It's like, yeah, crowd killing's not that bad. Like, I think everybody knows, and again, this might be because it's 2026 and not 2010, but like, I feel like everybody who's windmilling knows they look stupid. It doesn't feel to me like people are trying to impress anybody. At least within the West Michigan hardcore scene, like, one of the biggest bands around here, it seems, is a band called MDOP, and they were playing the last show at this venue before the venue closed down, and this guy, it was like right at the end of 2025, and he's like, 2026, nobody's cool. I don't want any cool people at any hardcore shows in Michigan. If you're cool, stay the fuck home. None of that. No frat boy breakdowns. This is for weirdos and queers and losers. So again, I feel like West Michigan in general has like a pretty good scene. There's a lot of juggalos here still. There's a lot of straight edge people, and I think everyone's just kind of weird and dumb, and it's nice. It's nice to be around.
And Yeah, it's it's welcoming when misfits find misfits, and everybody has a kind of an open mind about that. Obviously, sim scenes, through the years and through the decades, weren't always like that. But I do think there's a point in time where, especially with younger kids, you're raised on this diversity and this understanding, this kind of like wide view, even more so than me talking about it being a child of the '80s or anything like that. Like especially with those kind of scenes, because there's some lessons that have always been a part of punk or hardcore anyways,
Mm-hmm.
that are about belonging and about accepting and things like that. And so I think with these kids being raised with the internet and obviously what they've seen happen in a decade, you know what I mean? Of what culture really looks like these days, and then what the world is against now at this point in time with, you know, true jackasses, calling the shots. I think that kids now just really, if you find a weirdo, you embrace that weirdo, and you may hate ICP.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Or you might dislike straight edge, unless you've got some hardline straight edge guys, because those guys are always a pain in the ass. But like, yeah. Anyways, that's cool. It's cool to hear. I mean, and it's cool as someone who's not so connected to it anymore on any level. I would always just assume that the status quo was being kept everywhere. In the sense that like there are these pocket scenes everywhere, and there are great bands inside of them that you may never hear, but like it's cool that it exists, because like that's especially even at a time with hardcore where clearly this is one of the first times in the history of that genre anyways. Punk already went through it in the 90s, but hardcore, especially with things like Turnstile,
Mm-hmm.
or the band everybody made fun of with the girl who's got green hair who did Taco Bell commercials or whatever, who I don't Scowl, where like that's kind of at odds with, I think, a lot of like hardcore purists things, because they do believe that like, yeah, you don't want cool people, and you don't want tourists,
Mm-hmm.
you want, because that shit will ruin a scene, or somebody shows up that's like you definitely experienced this in the 90s, going to shows especially when things were very visible, but even when like things like Sick of It All were on major labels, because major labels were scooping up every punk or punk adjacent thing that they could, you would have these like crowds where you're like, you might have saw Sick of It All and it was a scary crowd, but then you'd see Sick of It All a year later when their fucking like Sire or Warner Brothers record came out, and you'd be like, this crowd is really scary because it's morons who just think that they can beat everybody up,
Yeah.
So it was always a very strange situation back then. But now I can see why people are, to a certain degree, are inviting, but have to gatekeep a little bit to keep out tourists and people who just think like, oh, this is, again, like, oh, look at that person who, somebody who comes in and sees somebody windmilling. They're like, that's great. I can punch people. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he's a yoked out psychopathic frat boy. He probably fucking just date raped somebody. You know what I mean? And you're just like, dude, you don't belong here, bro.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Unfortunately, unless you can calm the fuck down, you know?
I will say the best shows I've been to are the ones where on the poster it says no drugs, no alcohol, all ages or die. And
yeah,
like,
that's some Gilman shit, 924 Gilman shit, for sure.
And like,
yeah,
like it's nice. Like I don't know, like recovering alcoholic or whatever. And like, so I'm not straight edge by choice. I'm straight edge because I don't want to ruin my life.
Sure. Absolutely.
And like, so like, again, like as a teen, I would have been like, oh, straight edge. Like, because there was like the one straight edge guy at the high school who got suspended for spray painting FSU in the bathroom stall. And like, so like that's what I thought straight edge was. I thought it was the kid who was kind of tangential to my friend group who was stupid.
Yeah.
And I was like, well,
and
I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to be around that.
No. And yeah. And that's like a great example. There's like this law of diminishing returns with a lot of this stuff. And with what Homeboy started with FSU, whose name I always forget, but I've, whoever started FSU, he's obviously now not that, and he writes for TV and shit like that. I can't ever remember his name. I should, because I definitely we were always scared of him in Boston, coming through in our hardcore shows, because Boston is a small city. So, but It's just like that idea of like whatever FSU represented, and DMS is like this in New York with the Madball team and things like that, is that there, it's a, how it starts is a brotherhood, a gang, things like that, or just be, your friends that are scary, but the law of diminishing returns is when that starts spreading and people can see like they can just be mean, rude, idiotic. I mean, FSU gave a bad name to straight edge, truthfully.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you just don't have to beat up junkies. I'm sorry. You don't.
No.
You can probably beat up a couple drug dealers. That's legit.
Yeah.
But, but that's kind of stuff, that kind of fringe kind of, thinking obviously attracts, and this is how they get skinheads to be skinheads. It's the same kind of thing. You could just, you attract a certain kind of person who is maybe not necessarily stable and, lacks competence. And, so it's like they get fed something because they're soft brain because they just want to belong. They want to belong. You know what I mean? And so bad shit can happen, especially in these kind of very violent factions, these niche kind of like groups. But yeah, FSU. God, I mean, that's still around, and but it's obviously calmed the fuck down a whole bunch. They're not probably on like a hate group watch list for the FBI anymore or whatever the fuck they were on.
Probably
not. Not so much anymore. But anyways, yeah, hardcore.
It's fascinating to hear your takes on that, especially like where I'm at now. Like, I had been going to poetry readings for years, like open mics, write some poetry, read some poetry, whatever. Right. And I kind of burnt out on that. I'm not much of a poet. Like, I'll write poetry, but I'm not much of a poet. And I went to one reading and the vibes were off, and then I skipped the next one, and then I skipped the next one, and then I was like, well, I'm not leaving the house anymore. I gotta leave the house. And my wife was like, you gotta find something to do. And I had been seeing posters around town, right, for shows, and I was like, okay, I'll follow them on Instagram, and I'll figure out who they're following and find some promotions, and then we'll go to a $5 show and see. And like the bug just bit me again. It's like, yeah, this is good. This is great. And like, not looking up any bands beforehand, and you stand in the back until you catch the vibe, and then move up if you feel comfortable moving up. And
yeah, absolutely.
Find someone in their teens and tell them that they did a good job, and watch their eyes light up, and then you go home. And in town, like, I'm home by 10:30, 11 o'clock.
Oof, that's ideal.
Like, doors at 6:30, music at 7, no punk time, just, somehow 6 bands and you're done by 10. Sick. Fantastic.
Well, that's 3 bands too many, but if you can get home still early like that, then it is, we used to call that Tampa time. Call it, a show should be Tampa time. Should no lollygagging, no fucking around, get in, get out. Granted, a lot of Tampa bands that I was involved with would only play for 10 minutes, but still, like 15 tops.
It's a lot of 15, 20-minute sets, and it's
awesome.
The venue has a drum set, and everyone's just switching out cymbals and snares, and
that's
so
cool.
it moves quick.
Yeah.
The people in town who are putting on shows are doing a great job.
That's cool. Yeah, I love to hear that shit. I haven't been to a show and purposely that wasn't work related or Stake Mountain related, or if my wife was a part of that world a little bit too, so she's got friends in town. I might end up at a show, but like purposely, it's been decades, truly. Like probably when I stopped being in bands.
Yeah.
That I was like, yeah, I'm definitely going to go to ABC Rio on a Saturday at 2 p.m. to see a bunch of crust bands play in the fucking gallery upstairs. No, I'm not. You know what I mean? Like, I'm absolutely not.
Yeah.
But it's cool. It's very exciting for me to always know that stuff still exists. And as it should, because there should be a constant in and out. You know what I mean? There should be a not a quick turnaround, but a turnaround,
Yeah.
It attracts youth and wide-eyed kids who are excited, and that's cool, man, because there ain't a whole fuck of a lot to be excited about. So if you can find something and find people who have that same kind of feeling, it is exciting. It's intoxicating, clearly, you know what I mean, for kids. so, or young people or adults refinding it again. You know what I mean? Like, people who abandoned it and come back, so I know a lot of kids in my age group. I'm 49. So a lot of the guys that I grew up with, because let's be honest, it's usually always guys, at least from my era. And so it's like, they disappeared for a couple of years, or a decade or whatever, got jobs, had kids or whatever. And then their kids are fucking 13, 14, whatever. And they have time. And then they're like, oh, fuck, I want to start a band again. Or we're going to do a reunion for my old band that had a fucking 7-inch with fucking, whatever, or Synapse or somebody like that. And that's interesting to see too. I was very judgmental about it at first because I like to make fun of people. And it's not a purity thing and it's not an honesty thing and it's anything. I just like making fun of people. Like, so with these guys coming back and being like, I'm going to start my midlife crisis band again. Like, at first I made fun of them, but now it's like, that's cool, dude. Like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm 49 and I've been Xeroxing skulls for fucking 30 years, dude. Like, the fuck, I can't talk any shit, like, and when it came down to being like, because one of the bands I was in a band called Reversal of Man, which was at least a bigger, medium-sized screamo kind of band, and that has it's a marginal cult following on some sort of level. And the guys wanted to do a reunion, and I didn't want to. I agreed to it at first, and then I backed out. But it was cool, man, because they're all excited, and they're doing all kinds of shit, and like, they're playing California in a couple months, and they're doing stuff here and there where their schedules and their adult lives permit, and that's cool, So like, and I'm involved just helping them with art and everything like that. But at first I was goofing on them, you know what I mean? Like, but ultimately, if you can make money doing it, at least a little bit of money or a lot of money. Some of these reunion shows for these hardcore bands that were part of my era that are getting back together, like Orchid and stuff like that, they're doing all right for themselves for these reunion shows. That's cool. You should never deny money if it can be made, unless it goes against your morals or whatever eye rolling shit.
At the skinhead bar.
I understand. Yeah, exactly. Like if you're like, we need money. Let's go to the skinhead bar. But yeah. So, anyways, but it's cool. I'm glad. Just in general, it's like it's exciting to see that these kind of like things still operate the same, but have the same. But most importantly, that's not really the point. The point is that they have the same effect. And that's cool.
Right.
To me, despite how much I make fun of punk and hardcore bands or going to shows or anything like that in general, like it's cool that it exists. And that people get something out of it. Because again, there ain't a whole lot in the fucking world to get anything out of.
Right.
So it's cool, so yeah. Anyways.
So I'm curious.
So yeah, we just did 40 minutes on hardcore.
We did. We did. Take that, everybody. That's good. I needed to get it out somewhere because my wife doesn't care.
Sure.
She's like,
yeah, no.
She's like, you saw how many bloody noses at the show, and I'm letting you go to these. Go back to the poetry readings. So I guess I'm curious then, because like, you told me ahead of time you got a book coming out next year. You got your art book coming out here soon, or just came out, depending on when people hear this. Sure. You're writing books, you're working on art. Like, what is your relationship with like the older stuff you've done, music, or I mean, like you said at the beginning of this, like Hunchback is, it pops up every now and again.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a good question. And I will give you the not normal answer I would give, which is being sarcastic about it. Is that like, I don't have a whole, like, it kind of depends on what it is. With Hunchback 88, like I said, like I just haven't picked it up, but it's not because I'm embarrassed by it or anything like that. It just, I work so much and I've done so much, especially with even on the Stake Mountain end of things, like the art end of things. Like I've been doing it for like almost 30 years. I've definitely been doing it for 30 years. And I work in a way that's fast and quick. And so I just keep moving. And sometimes I'll see stuff and I'll be like, oh, I did that? You know, like, oh, really? That's crazy. And I don't, and it's, some of it is that I don't, as far as the art goes, you know, as far as Stake Mountain stuff goes, a lot of it, especially for the first 20 years of doing it, I had zero respect for what I was doing or who I was doing it for. You know, like in the sense that, like, even as a hardcore kid, I hated hardcore. You know, like even as a punk kid, I hated punk, you know? And then when I kind of got out of those bands, but I was still doing work for other bands, whether it was Against Me or Adam Is Package or anybody who kind of came along who wanted the work, I, you know, didn't like any of those bands. You know, like I just couldn't give a fuck, you know, like, so a lot of the times I was doing stuff and, you know, obviously became friends with some of these people, especially like Laura from Against Me, you know, who I was close with for a great many years, but not on like a musical level, just on a shit talking level, because that woman can fucking talk a ton of shit. So it's like, that's where our middle ground became, like where we met each other, because we were both haters, you know? So it was always pretty interesting to kind of be in that kind of relationship. But like you know, if I looked at the 30 years of art that I did, and I would think that I could only pick out two things that I think are fucking cool, you know? And I've done like hundreds of things, but then a lot of the times, like, I'm wrong about that. And I think like there are people who, one of the best things about this being at this point, doing this kind of art, which I don't do very frequently, truthfully, is that I'm in a position now where like I can help friends out. You know, I like doing that. If somebody comes to me like Chris Zeischig or whatever, and he's like, I need a book cover. You know, Chris and I knew each other a little bit tangentially when he was an adult performer and I was working at kink.com, because he would come and shoot. It was years later that we actually became friends, when we were both writing. And I was like, you know, we kind of hooked up because he was in a band for a bit and I was helping him out with, you know, with some art for his like little, not little, but industrial metal band that he had with another adult performer. And then we just became friends. And it's like, I like doing stuff like that. I hate making art. I think it's terrible. It's not something that I enjoy doing. It's a fucking chore. You know, like, I don't like the creative aspect of it. I find it very fucking annoying, which is why I lean on skulls, because really you can always catch a motherfucker with a skull. So like, you know, there's so many ways to whatever, fry an egg, right? Or whatever. There's so many ways to Xerox a skull, and everybody fucking loves it. It's like, they've never seen it, and they've seen it a million times, but it's like they're seeing it for the first time and they're excited. But it's, I hate doing it. But I do enjoy helping friends out, or helping even younger people who come looking for stuff, you know, like, and they might know Stake Mountain, or they might know the work. They don't know my shitty attitude, but they're asking for help, and I don't mind helping. And inside of that, like, the Stake Mountain work is, I look back on it mostly because what I can get out of it now. You know, there are people who like that terrible music that I was involved in, who come to me now and they're in different positions in their life that are far past that scene or that interest, that they end up being, you know, like, I'm working on a book right now for an author who I won't name, even though it would be great, who is doing a book for Simon and Schuster, but he's an old hardcore guy, and he writes for a gigantic fucking magazine, and he was like, bro, like, do you want to do this with me? And I was like, that's great. Yeah, I'd love to help you out. And that's awesome that you're in this weird, many far removed fucking stage of being not a fucking sweaty kid at the fucking First Unitarian Church in fucking Philadelphia, seeing a bunch of fucking screamo bands play, you know? So it was, you know, it's cool to kind of be, what Stake Mountain has brought me is better than what I've done with it. You know what I mean? Like, in the sense that, like, you know, Finner at Permanent Sleep Press probably wouldn't be interested in a book from me if I wasn't in Combat Wounded Veteran and Rehearsal and that. You know, so it's given me these, you know, the past has given me a lot of opportunities that are really incredible, you know, and, you know, whether now just being, my day job is working for this Blu-ray company called Vinegar Syndrome that put out beautiful editions of garbage, you know? So yeah, like, they're huge. It's, you know, and I'm the creative director there. That's my day job. And that would have not happened if I wasn't Stake Mountain for 30 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I wasn't in Combat Wounded Veteran and Reversal of Man. So like I look back on that stuff now as a almost 50-year-old with a fondness because it's given me great opportunities, despite the shade that I put on the work, all the shit that I talk about it, you know what I mean? The quality of it or whatever, you know, it's different for the books though. The books I take extremely seriously, actually, truly, in a way that like I hadn't really done when I was working in adult movies from 2009 to 2012 as a set decorator in San Francisco at kink.com. I took that job very seriously because I wanted to be a director of pornography. So I was trying to work my way through the system inside of there to direct adult movies. It didn't end up working out the way I wanted to, and I left. But like that and the books, you know, I take more seriously than I ever have before, especially with something like, you know, Hunchback 88 was a lark. It was a fuck around that got an opportunity, but like it was a weird experiment. I had a day job where I was able to write and fuck around. And so I wrote it, and then Finner just kind of came along at the right moment. You know, I would have maybe just sat on a hard drive because I don't have the ambition to just send shit to people. And then from there, like, because I just, it's like, what, why, who cares? You know,
me and my 10 unpublished manuscripts in a Google Drive feel that so hard.
Just like, yeah, it happens. And I got extremely lucky, but I got extremely lucky because of what I'd done. But with Holy Day, I tried actually hard to be very, you know, be not studious, but, you know, I purposely wrote a book. The Holy Day is me purposely writing a book. Hunchback 88 was me fucking around and being like, oh, I have a book. You know, I fucked around and I did something experimental that I was very interested in trying out. And I feel like it worked on some sort of level. And then, or it did what I wanted it to do at the time. If I read this fucking thing today, who knows? You know, but like, it did what it said on the tin at the time. And that was important to me. But the Holy Day, I was purposely writing a book. You know, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to try this again. And Chelsea Hodson at Rose Books, was a friend, and she's married to one of my closest friends, you know, this guy named Mark McCoy, who was in great hardcore bands and still is doing hardcore stuff via Youth Attack Records, but he was in Charles Bronson, he was whatever. So she's part of the family, you know. McCoy and I have known each other for 30 plus years. So at some point in time when I was writing the Holy Day, I had asked Chelsea like to take a look, you know, because she was doing manuscript consultations, and I trust very few people, but I know that like Chelsea's interest still and always has been. She's kind of like that sense where she likes a lot of things, a lot of different things, whether it is a microwave manual with necrophilia in it or something that's more properly written. Her scope is wide, and what she can look at, devour, and understand and be excited about is all over the map, and that's awesome. And so she just loves the written word, whether it is experimental or traditional, you know. And, you know, her book of essays was great, and, you know, she's working on a novel now. And but I asked her because I trust few people with that kind. I don't know a lot of people really truly expanded like that, like we were talking about kind of at the outset, you know. So I just asked her, and it was really funny because she read it and she sent me like a kind of a breakdown letter that was like kind of like, here's what's cool about this, and here are some places you could send it to if you were going to submit it, you know. She's like, but I'm starting something and I would love this to be the second book. And I was like, way to bury the lead, bro. You could have just texted me that. And so that was cool and very exciting for me. But then I took it even more seriously because Chelsea is a respected figure. It is doing cool shit. You know what I mean? Is involved with the very important things. And I thought like, I took it even more seriously. So my viewpoint has kind of changed in my older age about making art in some sort of way, at least with the writing, you know? So yeah. And so that was very cool for me. And I've also not read The Holy Day and fucking, you know, probably since it came out, but, and I probably won't because why get high on your own supply?
Right.
But you know, on the occasion I have picked it up and randomly flipped through it, including today, I was like, damn, I wrote that. What's this whole part, dude? What is this? You know what I mean? What was I even thinking at that point in time? But that in itself too, I believe did exactly what I wanted it to do, with the help from Chelsea and just the focus that I put into it. That I was very serious about making it good, or making it exactly what it needed to be, good or not.
Does that like, what does it feel like to be working on something like The Holy Day? Because like obviously you do creative stuff and have done creative stuff for a long time, right?
Sure, yeah.
Like I don't begrudge you your attitude toward making art for a living, right? Sure. but it is surprising to me, right? And I think maybe grumpier people would be like, do you know how many people are trying to do this? Or you're not, whatever.
Exactly.
And like,
which is, but I'll interrupt you for a second, which is why I don't really try to do the same shit talking that I used to do as a kid.
Sure.
Because I do know that. Mm-hmm. Because I understand that, like, I'm in a position and I'm extremely fucking fortunate for everything that's ever happened to me.
Right.
You know, like, I understand that. Whether my personal feelings when I sit at the fucking computer and be like, oh, fucking brother, I don't want to do this. Mm-hmm. I understand that I'm fucking lucky and it's rare. Mm-hmm. So I will say that. But yes, go ahead. So
yeah, but I guess the thing is that, like, you spent your entire life doing creative things, and then you sit down to write mm-hmm. The Holy Day, and it's something you want to do, and it's something you're passionate about, and it, like, what does it feel like to be doing that? To be, like, flexing those same muscles in a direction that is exciting to you?
It feels exactly the same. The only difference is that I'm not aggravated that I have to do it.
Okay.
And I am always fucking even when I want to help somebody out. Ultimately, I'm fucking annoyed that I'm doing it and that I agreed to do something to help somebody out. But my problem is like, and this is, so that's the deal with the difference between the two is that main thing, is that, like, I'm not fucking annoyed that I'm doing something, you know, but the creative process is the same. I don't figure out exactly what I want to do, but I have an idea of what I'm trying to do. And I just make it up as I go along, and it fits. You know, a lot of the times it's not about telling a story. Mm-hmm. It is about fitting into some sort of schematic I've thought up of how the design of a book could flow. I'm interested in the structure more than I am interested in the words. And as somebody who's, you know, looked at both those books, you know, it's not like I'm trying to tell you a great fucking story here. And I don't have to, you know, like, because I believe that there are enough fucking books that tell you an amazing story. Mm-hmm. That, like, we could have some slush that's maybe well done, but is a little bit off the beaten path. But that's the difference between the written word and something like movies or something like that. It's people, I always say this, that readers, people who are interested in books in general, you know, people who will classify themselves as a fucking reader and a lover of books, mm-hmm. are more willing, truly, other than the edgelords we were talking about earlier, who are fucking focused on whatever, like, you know, reading a short story about somebody licking a fucking dirty toilet bowl or whatever, is that, like, they're more adventurous than most people who consume other art.
Yeah.
You know, like, so, you know, people who love movies or love like Hollywood movies would never be caught dead watching something that was a little bit off the beaten path. And if they get stuck watching something that's a little bit off the beaten path, they complain about it, mm-hmm. because it didn't have a 3-act structure, because something wasn't resolved at the end, whatever, you know what I mean? So I think readers, you know, are a little bit more adventurous in what they'll take from you. From people, they'll follow that journey. You know, there's not plenty, but there's a few funny, good read reviews of The Holy Day or Hunchback 88. Be like, I don't know what the fuck I read, but I'm happy I read it. Or mm-hmm. this wasn't for me. The prose was beautifully written or whatever, which I appreciate, you know, but, you know, they were like, but this isn't my thing. but they finished the fucking book. They spent time reading 200 pages of something that they didn't like. It's crazy to me, that somebody would even spend the time. Dude, I'll get 10 pages into something if I do read something, if I've ever tried to read something that wasn't done by a friend, and if I don't like it, I'm just like, I don't care how it turns out, I don't need to know. I'm not that way with movies, but I'll finish almost every movie that I sit down to watch, even if it's fucking miserable.
Mm-hmm.
But
yep.
But like with the thing, yeah. So it's like, yeah, that's kind of how I write, So the creative process is like, I won't write it. I don't write for fun. I don't write as an experiment. I don't sit at home and if I don't have a book I'm working on, I don't write because I love writing. I don't. But I love, if I come up with a hook, something that keeps me interested, like I'll finish it. And that was what The Holy Day was. I wanted to do a very particular thing that was a honing of kind of what I did at Hunchback 88, which is a world-class fuck around, but make it a little bit more pointed. I wasn't, the work on Hunchback 88, once I realized I could do it, wasn't done yet,
Mm-hmm.
And I think with The Holy Day, I finished that kind of work and that understanding. And with the next book, which is called Shower Scene, which is going to come out in April 2027 with Rose Books, it is still a structural kind of nightmare how it's set up, but it will be the easiest fucking read if you've read the other two that you'll get from me, The experiment inside of it is not language. The experiment inside of it, because there's a lot of experimenting with language in Hunchback 88 and The Holy Day. But with Shower Scene, the experiment is truly the structure, and the structure of it is, I set up a kind of I've set up a portal inside of it for at least one chapter that goes a really long time, where I can fuck around because of the setting of it, I've been calling it like a home invasion thriller about 15 minutes in a shower. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what it is, even though it's not that, and that's only a part of the book. But it's like also like it's kind of like a true crime fiction is another thing I've been saying. All these things like Chelsea doesn't really want me to say in public for the most part, because she knows it's not really what they are. So we've been trying to find a way to, when she did the Publishers Weekly thing, she was basically kind of alluded to that line, just the note to say that it was going to be published and whatever. And, it is about an adult performer who's taking a shower. And that's kind of it, and she's reflecting on her life. And, but it's there's not a lot of fucking around, so it's, and I'm very excited about that. And that was just something else that I saw what I wanted to do, which meant that I had a book to write, and so then I started working on it. And then Chelsea got on board with it, she was like, I want to put it out. Let's do this, and, and it was cool. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, the difference between making anything is the same. It's just, I'm less annoyed, and the process is all over the place. Like I don't wake up at 6 a.m. before everybody's up and write for 3 hours. I don't do that. I just kind of just write whenever. I don't have a great set, I don't have a set time. I don't have it's kind of can just, if I've got an idea, I sit down and write it for the book if I think it'll fit in the book. But yeah, there's a lot of just very, basic bitch kind of stuff in the book that I'm really excited about. But I don't know if people who liked what happened with Hunchback 88 and The Holy Day, if they will be, my 4 fans, who like a certain kind of sensibility in my writing might not like this because it is different, so, and that's fine because I'm just looking to become a really boring writer if I continue to write past this book, like my dream is actually to write a Robert Ludlum novel or a fucking Jackie Collins thing. I don't have it in me, but maybe by the time I'm 80, I'll have a beach read in my fucking, in me, but I'm still just trying to figure out how the fuck to write,